The world is standing on the edge of a geopolitical earthquake, and almost nobody realizes how quickly the balance of power is changing behind the scenes. Right now, in one of the most dangerous waterways on Earth, a military operation is quietly being prepared that could reshape global energy markets, hit Vladimir Putin where it hurts most, and completely redefine Ukraine's role on the world stage. And the most shocking part? It is not being led by the United States. It is not a giant NATO fleet. It is Ukraine. At this very moment, specialized mine hunters are preparing for a mission that many analysts never believed possible. Their destination is the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow strip of water that controls a massive portion of the world's oil and gas supply. What happens there over the next few weeks could determine the future of global energy prices, the survival of fragile economies, and even the financial strength behind Russia's war machine. Because here is the reality few people fully understand. The Strait of Hormuz is not just another shipping route. It is the single most important maritime choke point on the planet. At its narrowest point, it is only around 34 kilometers wide. That tiny gap between Iran and Oman handles close to 1/5 of the world's oil supply. Nearly 20% of global liquefied natural gas passes through it as well. Add fertilizer exports, chemical shipments, and commercial trade, and suddenly you begin to realize why every major government on Earth watches this waterway with absolute obsession. Before the crisis erupted in early 2026, thousands of vessels crossed the strait every single month. Tankers loaded with crude oil sailed toward Europe and Asia. Massive LNG carriers supplied power stations across the globe. Cargo ships carried critical goods between continents. The entire system functioned like the beating heart of global trade. Then everything changed. When mines began appearing in the shipping lanes, panic spread instantly across financial markets. Insurance companies raised premiums to extreme levels. Commercial operators started rerouting vessels. Some shipping companies suspended operations entirely. Within days, traffic through the strait collapsed. Global energy prices exploded upward. Oil surged past levels many economists thought impossible. Gas prices skyrocketed. Supply chains began cracking under the pressure, and the consequences were immediate. Across Asia, governments scrambled to secure fuel supplies. In Pakistan, power shortages intensified as rationing measures were introduced. In Bangladesh, emergency fuel controls were implemented to stabilize the national grid. Manufacturing sectors across developing economies began slowing down because factories could no longer absorb rising energy costs. Even wealthy nations in the Gulf faced logistical chaos as critical imports became harder to secure. But the crisis did not stop at fuel. Fertilizer exports were disrupted, creating fears of reduced agricultural production later in the year. Airlines introduced new fuel surcharges. Shipping delays pushed up consumer prices worldwide. Economists started warning about stagflation, the nightmare combination of inflation and economic slowdown happening simultaneously. Every single day, the strait remained partially blocked. The damage grew worse. And as the crisis deepened, one country quietly benefited more than almost anyone else: Russia. Before the Hormuz crisis, Moscow's economy was under increasing pressure. Western sanctions had squeezed critical industries. Ukrainian drone strikes targeted refineries and infrastructure. Export revenues were under strain. Oil prices had remained relatively contained, limiting the Kremlin's financial flexibility. Then the Strait crisis sent energy markets into chaos. Suddenly, global oil prices surged high enough to hand Russia an enormous financial windfall. Every extra dollar added to the price of crude translated into billions flowing into Moscow's budget. Analysts estimated Russia was earning roughly an additional $150 million every single day because of elevated energy prices linked directly to disruptions in Hormuz. Think about what that means. Every additional week of instability helped finance missiles, artillery shells, drones, military salaries, and logistics supporting Russia's war effort. Every tanker unable to pass safely through the Gulf indirectly strengthened the Kremlin's ability to continue fighting. And Ukraine understood this immediately. For Kyiv, this was not simply a Middle Eastern crisis. It was directly connected to the battlefield back home. The mines in Hormuz were not just threatening shipping lanes. They were helping fund the Russian war machine. That is why Ukraine made a decision almost nobody expected. Instead of remaining entirely focused on its own front lines, Ukraine began preparing to send specialized naval forces thousands of miles away into one of the most dangerous maritime environments in the world, not for symbolism, not for publicity, but to directly attack the economic conditions helping sustain Russia's war effort. And that is where the story becomes truly extraordinary, because the vessels preparing for deployment are not ordinary patrol boats. They are highly specialized NATO standard mine hunters designed specifically for operations in hostile, mine-contaminated waters. These ships represent years of training, coordination, and technical preparation. 4 vessels form the core of the force: 2 Sandown-class mine hunters and 2 Tripartite-class mine countermeasure ships. Individually, each vessel brings unique strengths. Together, they create a remarkably capable mine warfare package. The Sandown-class ships are built for precision operations in difficult acoustic environments. They are equipped with advanced variable depth sonar systems capable of detecting mines hidden in challenging underwater conditions. Unlike traditional sonar systems fixed to a ship's hull, these systems can adjust depth dynamically, allowing operators to scan through difficult thermal layers in the water. That matters enormously in the Persian Gulf. Warm surface temperatures and shifting underwater conditions create highly distorted acoustic environments. Conventional sonar can struggle badly there. Mines become harder to identify. False signals increase. Detection becomes slower and more dangerous. Variable depth sonar changes the game. It gives crews the ability to adapt in real time, dramatically improving the probability of locating hidden threats. And these crews are not inexperienced sailors. Some of the personnel involved have already operated in Middle Eastern conditions before. They understand the region's tides, temperatures, and navigational challenges. That practical knowledge is priceless in mine warfare, where small mistakes can become catastrophic instantly. Then there are the Tripartite-class vessels. These ships bring another layer of capability. Originally developed through cooperation between Belgium, France, and the Netherlands during the Cold War, they are built specifically to minimize magnetic signatures. Their specialized hull construction helps reduce the risk of triggering magnetic influence mines. Because modern naval mines are no longer simple explosive devices floating underwater waiting for contact. The mines being encountered in the Strait of Hormuz are sophisticated weapons. Some use acoustic sensors capable of identifying specific engine sounds. Others rely on magnetic detection systems that respond to changes caused by large metal hulls passing overhead. Some are programmed with delay mechanisms or selective targeting features. These are intelligent underwater weapons designed to create maximum disruption with minimal visibility. And the danger is made even worse by the chaotic conditions surrounding their deployment. According to multiple reports, so many mines were laid so quickly during the early stages of the crisis that even Iranian forces reportedly lost track of some of their own minefields. New mines have allegedly continued appearing in active shipping channels even after diplomatic efforts attempted to stabilize the situation. In other words, the Gulf has become an underwater maze filled with partially mapped threats. That makes this one of the most difficult mine clearance operations in recent naval history. And the United States knows it. The U.S. Navy has already deployed its own mine countermeasure assets to the region, including specialized ships, helicopters, and underwater drones. But even American officials have acknowledged the enormous complexity of the mission. Clearing the strait completely could take months. Months. That is why additional capable forces are so valuable right now. And this is precisely where Ukraine enters the picture. Working closely with the United Kingdom, Ukrainian crews have undergone extensive NATO interoperability training. Joint exercises, operational certification programs, and technical integration efforts have transformed these crews into a force capable of participating in high-threat multinational operations. This is not improvised. It is organized, deliberate, and strategically calculated. For years, many outside observers viewed Ukraine primarily as a recipient of military aid, a nation dependent on support from larger powers. But this operation signals something much bigger. Ukraine is evolving from a security consumer into a security provider. That shift carries enormous geopolitical implications. Because in modern international politics, influence does not come only from economic size or military scale anymore. Specialized expertise matters. Combat experience matters. Adaptability matters. And after years of intense warfare, Ukraine possesses something few countries can claim: a military force hardened by real, high-intensity combat against a major adversary. That experience has transformed Ukrainian doctrine, tactics, and operational thinking. Now, the country is beginning to project those capabilities beyond its own borders, and that changes perceptions globally. Imagine the symbolism for a moment. A nation still defending itself against invasion is simultaneously contributing to global maritime security halfway across the world. That sends a message far beyond the Middle East. It tells allies that Ukraine is not collapsing under pressure. It tells adversaries that the country is becoming more capable, not less. And it tells the world that modern influence belongs increasingly to nations willing to act decisively under extreme conditions. For Vladimir Putin, this development is deeply problematic because the entire financial logic behind Russia's recent economic breathing room depends heavily on elevated energy prices. If the Strait of Hormuz stabilizes and shipping flows normalize, oil prices could fall significantly. That would hit Moscow hard. Russia's war economy already faces mounting pressure from sanctions, infrastructure damage, labor shortages, and rising military expenditures. The Hormuz crisis temporarily eased some of that pressure by boosting export revenues. But if Ukraine helps reopen the world's most critical energy choke point, that temporary advantage could disappear. And Kyiv knows exactly what it is doing. This operation is not only about maritime security. It is economic warfare by other means. Ukraine has already targeted Russian oil facilities repeatedly throughout the war. Drone strikes on refineries and export terminals aim to reduce Moscow's revenue generation capacity. The Hormuz disruption partially undermined those efforts by making remaining exports more profitable. Now Ukraine is attacking the problem from another angle: restore global supply, reduce price spikes, cut the Kremlin's windfall. It is a remarkably sophisticated strategy when viewed in full context, and the timing matters enormously, because global politics are entering a period of rapid instability. Energy security has become inseparable from military competition. Economic pressure and battlefield outcomes are now deeply interconnected. The country that controls supply routes influences financial systems. The country that stabilizes shipping lanes gains diplomatic leverage. The country capable of protecting global trade becomes strategically valuable far beyond its geographic size. Ukraine understands this, and increasingly, so do its allies. The United Kingdom's role in this operation also deserves close attention. British naval expertise in mine warfare is among the best in the world. Royal Navy cooperation has provided training, technical support, and operational integration essential for preparing Ukrainian crews. This partnership reflects a broader transformation happening inside NATO itself. The alliance is evolving away from rigid hierarchies toward more flexible, capability-based coalitions. Countries contribute specialized strengths rather than simply relying on traditional great power dominance. In this model, even smaller or embattled nations can become indispensable players if they possess unique operational expertise. That is exactly what Ukraine is becoming. Meanwhile, the wider coalition surrounding the mission continues expanding quietly. Multiple nations have reportedly signaled interest in supporting maritime stabilization efforts in the Gulf. Some may contribute logistics, others intelligence sharing, others surveillance assets or escort operations. And all of it traces back to one core reality. The global economy cannot function normally while the Strait of Hormuz remains unstable. Every government understands the stakes. Every central bank understands the stakes. Every energy trader understands the stakes. Because if the crisis drags on indefinitely, the consequences become terrifying. Inflation rises further. Food prices climb. Supply chains weaken. Political instability spreads. Fragile economies face collapse. And geopolitical tensions intensify everywhere. That is why the upcoming deployment matters so much. It is not just another naval mission. It is a test of whether the international system can still protect the arteries of global trade in an age of hybrid warfare and regional escalation. And make no mistake, mine warfare is one of the most psychologically powerful forms of conflict on Earth. A single hidden explosive device can paralyze entire shipping lanes. Mines create fear disproportionate to their cost. They force slow, cautious operations. They increase insurance rates instantly. They pressure governments politically and economically. That is why they remain so effective even in the age of satellites, drones, and advanced missiles. And clearing them is painstaking work. Mine hunters move slowly through dangerous waters using precision sonar scans. Suspected objects must be identified carefully. Underwater drones or remotely operated vehicles often inspect targets individually. Disposal operations require extraordinary caution. One mistake can destroy a ship instantly. That is the environment Ukrainian crews may soon enter. And yet, despite those risks, the mission continues moving forward. Because for Kyiv, the strategic rewards are enormous. Success would strengthen Ukraine's global reputation dramatically. It would deepen military cooperation with Western allies. It would demonstrate operational professionalism on an international stage. And economically, it could help undermine one of Russia's most important temporary advantages. In many ways, this operation symbolizes the transformation of Ukraine itself since 2022. What began as a desperate fight for national survival has evolved into something much larger. A military once focused entirely on territorial defense is now influencing global security dynamics. Ukrainian innovation in drones, electronic warfare, intelligence integration, and asymmetric tactics has already reshaped modern military thinking. Now, maritime operations may become part of that story as well. And perhaps most importantly, this deployment challenges one of the Kremlin's original assumptions. Russia expected Ukraine to become weaker over time. Instead, the war has produced a battle-hardened state increasingly integrated into international security structures. That reality is becoming impossible to ignore. As the ships prepare for eventual transit toward the Middle East, governments around the world are watching carefully. Energy markets are watching carefully. Military planners are watching carefully. Because what happens next could influence far more than a single shipping lane. If the operation succeeds, it may mark the beginning of a new era where Ukraine emerges not merely as a defended nation, but as an active strategic actor helping shape global stability itself. And that would represent one of the most remarkable geopolitical transformations of the modern era. A country invaded to be erased from history, instead becoming a contributor to international security on a global scale. That is the deeper meaning behind these mine hunters. They are not just ships. They are symbols of adaptation, resilience, and strategic evolution in a world where traditional assumptions about power are collapsing faster than many leaders expected. And somewhere in Moscow, officials understand exactly what that means. Because every mine removed from the Strait of Hormuz potentially removes money from the Kremlin's war budget. Every tanker that safely resumes transit weakens the economic shock benefiting Russia. Every successful operation strengthens Ukraine's international standing. This is why the mission matters, not just militarily, not just economically, but politically, symbolically, and strategically all at once. The world is entering a new era where regional conflicts no longer stay regional. Energy markets, military operations, cyber warfare, sanctions, shipping lanes, and economic survival are now tightly interconnected. And right now, in the middle of one of the world's most dangerous waterways, that reality is about to be tested in real time. Because if these ships deploy successfully, the consequences will ripple far beyond the Persian Gulf. They will reach Moscow, Washington, Brussels, Beijing, and every country whose economy depends on stable global trade. The next chapter of this crisis is about to begin, and the entire world is watching.